Well, those of you who have joined and probably read the front of the site now, Wanbli, it's up on the front of the site. Have you seen it up on the front of the site?
I did. I really appreciate that, Daniel.
So that's going to stay there. I noticed when I went to the site and I went to the Free Leonard official website, and I noticed a lot more people have jumped onto your site.
You bet. You bet. People are starting to pay attention.
So here we go.
A lot of it has to do with you offering the time and you letting your listeners have exposure to what we're fighting for, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate it, Daniel.
All right. Well, you know what? I'm going to let you go, and I'm going to let you have at it. And I know you have a lot of information that you want to get out, and the sooner the better. All right. So I'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a good one.
Will do.
I appreciate your time. As I always do, when I start off talking about Leonard, I want to ask for your help and helping us help Leonard. And one of the ways I have to ask this evening is that the Defense Committee has expenses. That's one of those things we all have to deal with. And the expenses mainly amount to office and telephone expenses. But as times have gotten tough for everyone, the LPDOC is having a hard time just covering telephone and office. All of us work for free. There's no salaries involved. It's all volunteer work. So I want to ask everybody if they would reach into their pockets, find a $10 bill. You know, if you're a smoker, that's a pack and a half of smokes. If you like burgers, that's a burger or order of fries and a drink. Or it's a couple gallons of gasoline. Find a $10 bill, pull it out of your pocket, stick it in an envelope, and mail it to the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. That's the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. And Leonard's sister, Betty Ann Peltier Solano, is at that office, and she takes care of this because she's taking care of her brother. So, again, if you got a $10 bill, I know times are tough. They're tough for all of us. But reach in there if you can and find a $10 bill and just stick it in the envelope for the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. We have to keep the central office going so we can have a better communication set up, and our network is complete that way. But I tell you what, the central office falls down because we can't pay the rent. We ain't quitting fighting. But it's good to have that central spot where people can contact us. So, again, $10 if you can to the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. If you can't find a 10, pull out a 5. Anything will help right now. And I come to you with cup in hand, so I needed to do that. So I've done that, and I'll ask you again before we end this evening. Also, we want to ask people, we need Leonard transferred from Lewisburg. He's in the prison at Lewisburg, PA. For his safety and health reasons, we need him transferred out of there. Now, we've tried writing the Bureau of Prisons, and we all get the same stock reply that's basically just to leave us alone. We'll do what we want to do. And I had a long conversation with Mike Kuzma, Leonard's lawyer. I talked to him for about an hour last Friday evening. And he says, don't bother writing the Bureau of Prisons because it gets lost in the bureaucracy. He says what we need to do, and this is what we're asking everybody to do, and we have been for a few days now, contact the Attorney General of the United States. Contact Eric Holder, the Attorney General. You can call his office at 202-353-1555. That's the Attorney General, Eric Holder, 202-353-1555. Or you can email him at askdoj@usdoj.gov. That's askdoj@usdoj.gov. And it's Attorney General Eric Holder. And what we want to ask him to do, firstly, is to transfer Leonard to the Turtle Mountain Banded Chippewa Indians and let him finish his sentence out there under either house arrest or probation or parole. But primarily right now, we need to get him transferred closer to home, if it's to Turtle Mountain or to the FCI Sandstone, Minnesota facility or the FCI Oxford, Wisconsin facility. You know, it's been shown that Leonard is not safe and can't be kept safe in a federal max prison. When he was transferred to Canaan back 60 days ago, he was beat up. I mean, a 64-year-old man was beat up by a bunch of young thugs because of the prison pecking order. He's 64. He doesn't belong in a prison where his life is in danger, and his life is in danger in this prison where he is now. So again, contact Eric Holder at 202-353-1555. Ask that Leonard be transferred to the FCI Sandstone, Minnesota facility or the FCI Oxford, Wisconsin facility. It's out there closer to good health care. Leonard has serious health problems. He's got a jaw that is a constant problem because of a botched operation the prison system did on him. He's got diabetes. He has prostate problems. He's getting to be an older man. He needs health care, and there's good health care out those facilities. So one more time, my friends, call this phone number. It'll cost you, $1.50 to make the call, 202-353-1555, and ask the Attorney General of the United States to pay attention to America's #1 political prisoner, Leonard Peltier, and transfer him to those facilities. Again, you can email them at askdoj@usdoj.gov. Also, in the same vein of let's help Leonard, because we've talked many times about the irregularities and the illegalities of the case that's been forced upon Leonard, but we need to help him. So what we need you to do is contact the president, Mr. Barack Obama. He made many, 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 many big promises as he was running. He was adopted into the Crow Nation, and he promised that he would recognize and deal with the sovereignty of our nations down here in the lower 48. We need to hold his toes to that promise. In the time he's been in office already, he's had time to start addressing the issues of the prisoners in Guantanamo, Cuba, that aren't even citizens of this country, who've only been there for 6 years or 5 years. And I agree they shouldn't be there. They shouldn't be there. But Mr. Obama needs to address the problems of the citizens of this country to start with. And Leonard Peltier is being held unjustly. He was unjustly convicted. Mr. Obama needs to pay attention. He has promised to be a different kind of president. Well, so far in our relationships with Mr. Obama and our nation's relationships with him, this light that he was going to bring in and make the whole world brighter and a nicer place, he hadn't found the light switch yet. He hadn't hit the switch yet. We had a supporter have a 5-minute face-to-face conversation with him about 10 days ago, and he was bluntly asked, when is he going to free Leonard Peltier? And it was reported he got a glazed look upon his face and said he was going to look at clemency and pardons for several people at the end of about 90 days. But right now he was dealing with international problems. I tell you something, my friends, it does not take more than half an hour to sit down with an intelligent mind, and Mr. Obama is a lawyer and has taught law. He can sit down with an intelligent mind and read up on this case. It's there to read. Everything I tell you is there to read. Everything I tell you is there, and the other side is there. It's out there. Mr. Obama is a lawyer. This isn't a world crisis that takes a huge, huge intellect to solve and cope with. This isn't the finances of the world. This is one gentleman, one man who is innocent, sitting in prison, and all Mr. Obama has to do is take a half-hour look at the case, turn around to one of his aides and say, I'm going to go out and save the world now, but while I'm doing it, you get this man released today. You get the papers typed up for me, and I will sign them. He can do that. So we want you to pressure Mr. Obama and call him. Call the White House opinion line at 202-456-1111 and say that you want President Obama to exercise his rights as chief executive under Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution and grant clemency to Leonard Peltier. It's a simple thing to do. He has the power. It doesn't have to be no written-up piece of paper stuck on his desk. When Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon without a written-up request for it. He pardoned him for a crime he hadn't even been convicted of. The president has the power to do this. We need to put Mr. Obama's toes to the fire and see if he is truly the individual he said he was as he was running for president, or if he's just another person sitting in the same chair doing the same thing. So call President Barack Obama at 202-456-1111 and give your opinion. Now, if you've got a fax machine, fax Mr. Obama at 202-456-2461. The same thing on the fax. Tell Mr. Obama you would like him to release Leonard Peltier under clemency, and when the parole hearing comes up, if he hasn't managed to find 30 minutes to release him under clemency, to ensure that he's released under the parole hearing under the 30-year law. We have to make this president pay attention. The last presidents have walked right by Leonard sitting in that prison as they destroyed people all around the world. They bombed people all around the world. Mr. Bush, before he retired, King George, and left Washington, he pardoned 2 border patrolmen who shot in the back a Mexican national at the U.S. southern border, shot him in the back and killed him. They hid the evidence. They picked the cartridges up and hid them. They killed the man shooting him in the back. He pardoned them. He pardoned them. They're confessed murderers. Leonard never killed anyone. He's never killed anyone. That's what the truth is, my friends. You will find no evidence anywhere that Leonard killed anyone at any time. There is evidence that people got killed, and there is evidence what happened that day. And we'll talk about that later. But Leonard's never killed anyone. So please contact the president at 202-456-2461 with a fax, or call the White House opinion line at 202-456-1111 and ask that Leonard Peltier be granted clemency, free America's #1 political prisoner. Now, we have a thing going where all of our groups and all of our supporters call the White House every Friday. We bomb the White House phone lines. We bang them up. We beat the drum on those phone lines. We keep those phone lines tied up every Friday all day long for Leonard. But the thing is, you can call any day of the week. So if you want to call tomorrow morning before you head out or after you get in, give a call, 202-456-1111, and ask Obama to grant clemency to Leonard Peltier, and when a parole hearing comes up, if he hasn't found it in his heart to grant clemency, to ensure that Leonard is freed under the 30-year law. And he's a lawyer. He knows what that is. And he's a lawyer, and he knows Leonard is falsely imprisoned. So we ask you to do those 2 things for Leonard. He would do the same thing for you. He would do it for you. He's done it for people all his life. He's taken care of people all his life. Also want to remind people of the prayer vigil that's being held every second Saturday of the month at the prison in Lewisburg. It's on the corner of Route 15 and William Penn Road. Starts at sunrise, quits at sundown. Sometimes there's 10, 20 people there. Sometimes there's only the one person there who is putting on the prayer vigil. And I want to tell that one person, I am so very, very proud of you for standing there sometimes by yourself, holding your sign for Leonard. And I am very proud of you when people come and help you. But you keep standing there. And if we had somebody like you at every corner in the country, Leonard would have been free a long time ago. So, Wildflower, I'm very, very proud of you. So if you can, folks, if you're in the PA area, every second Saturday, the corner of Route 15 and William Penn Road. Stand there and be in that prayer vigil for Leonard. It's a good thing to do. It's the right thing to do. You know, I've had some people tell me in the last 5-6 days that I need to tone down a little bit, that I need to back off a little bit, that I do not need to be confronting the people I'm confronting. You know, I thought about that. I gave it deep consideration. 10, 12 seconds. I really put myself into worry over that. But what it did, it made me step back just a little bit and look at something that sometimes we overlook. I've told you about the things that have been wrong with this legal process he's gone through. But you know what I haven't talked a lot about is who is Leonard. And I want to talk a little bit this afternoon about who Leonard is. Because this isn't just a figure. This isn't just a cause. This is a human being with a heart beating inside his chest, with family, with loved ones, with a spirit, a huge spirit. He's been in prison for 33 years and is yet unbroken. He will not be broken. But I just want to share some of who Leonard is with you. And this is sharing about this man who stood up to protect his people from a reign of terror that the FBI unleashed on Pine Ridge Reservation between 1973 and 1975. So I'm going to share some Leonard Peltier with you here for the next few moments. Despite Leonard's imprisonment, that makes lots of barriers to deal with, just being in prison. He's made remarkable contribution to humanitarian and charitable causes. Leonard has played a key role in getting people from different tribes with his history of animosity to come together in peace. He advocates for peaceful resolutions of all issues that deal with Native Americans and respect for the rights of others. Leonard has worked with Dr. David Selkin on a pilot program on the Rosebud Reservation, the Leonard Peltier Health Care Reform Package, to document needs and requirements for delivery and care. The ultimate intent of the program is to fundamentally alter health care delivery on reserves throughout the U.S. Our health care delivery system down here for our First Nations people is pretty shoddy. He's worked with Professor Jeffrey Timmons on a program to stimulate reservation-based economics and investments and Native American business enterprises, including a component to teach business ownership and operation to the young people of the First Nations. In 1992, Leonard established a scholarship at New York University for Native American students seeking law degrees. He also was instrumental in the establishment and funding of a Native American newspaper by and for Native young people in Washington State. In addition to having raised 2 of his grandchildren from prison, Leonard has been a sponsoring father of 2 children through Child Reach, one in El Salvador and the other in Guatemala. Every year he sponsors a Christmas gift drive for the children of Pine Ridge. Leonard also serves on the board of the Rosenberg Fund for Children. Leonard organized an emergency food drive for people of Pueblo, Mexico, in response to the Actil massacre. He also frequently contributes to Head Start programs and domestic violence shelters to help address funding shortfalls. Leonard has helped several Indian prisoners rehabilitate themselves by advocating a drug and alcohol-free lifestyle while encouraging pride and knowledge in their culture and tradition. He's also worked to develop prisoner art programs, thereby increasing prisoners' self-confidence. Leonard donates his artwork to several human rights organizations and welfare groups. Most recently, recipients have been included, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Trail of Hope, World Peace and Prayer Day, the First Nations Student Association, and the Buffalo Trust Fund. Leonard has been widely recognized for his humanitarian works and has won several human rights awards. This man has been in prison for 33 years, my friends. He's won the North Star Frederick Douglass Award from prison The Federation of Labor from Ontario, Canada, Humanist of the Year Award. From prison, Human Rights Commission of Spain International Human Rights Prize. From prison. And the 2004 Silver Arrow Award for Lifetime Achievement. From prison. In 2008, Leonard Peltier, America's #1 political prisoner, was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for the 5th consecutive year. This is what this man has accomplished from prison. From prison. What have we done today? What have we done for Leonard Peltier today? He does for others from prison all the time. This man has got a huge spirit and a huge heart. He is where he is because he fought for his people. He still fights for his people day in, day out. Now, to help you understand a little more of this man's spirit, I want to read you some of his writings. Leonard has a heart that shows in his writings. He has a spirit that shows in his writings. He has a love for people and an understanding of the world that shows through his writings. So I'm going to read you a few of his pieces, and I know this isn't controversial, but this is the man we're trying to help, my friends. This is our brother. So I ask you to listen to his words and his spirit as they speak through these words. The first piece I'm going to read you is called Aboriginal Sin. Aboriginal Sin. Aboriginal Sin. We each begin in innocence. We all become guilty. In this life, you find yourself guilty of being who you are. Being yourself. That's Aboriginal Sin. The worst sin of all. That's a sin you'll never be forgiven for. We Indians are all guilty. Guilty of being ourselves. We're taught that guilt from the day we're born. We learn it well. To each of my brothers and each of my sisters, I say be proud of that guilt. You are guilty only of being innocent, of being yourselves, of being Indian, of being human. Your guilt makes you holy. Those are words from our brother Leonard Peltier. Our aboriginal sin, our guilt, makes us holy. He understands that. He understands that. Leonard also understands the responsibility we have to our people, to one another, and to do what is right. To speak up when it's required, no matter how inconvenient or how uncomfortable. To speak up when it's required. This piece from Leonard is entitled The Message, and here it is. Silence, they say, is the voice of complicity, but silence is impossible. Silence screams. Silence is a message, just as doing nothing is an act. Let who you are ring out and resonate in every word and every deed. Yes, become who you are. There's no sidestepping your own being or your own responsibility. What you do is who you are. You are your own comeuppance. You become your own message. You are the message. This is a man who believes this. This is a man who has stood for this. This is a man who has lived these words. These words are humbling. Leonard's been sitting in jail for 33 years. He knows who fired the kill shots on those agents. He knows. For 33 years, he has not spoken it. He understands the responsibility of action. He understands the responsibility we have, one Indian person to another. He understands it. He understands it. You know, Anime Aktosh Tiktu said something one time. She said, white people think they own this country. What they don't realize was, this is Anime's words, what they don't realize is a bunch of raggedy-ass pilgrims came over here and did this, and they control it now because there's more of them than us. What they also don't realize is a bunch of raggedy-ass Indians can change this world. And Anime said, I intend to be one of those raggedy-ass Indians. We're going to change it. We're going to get Leonard free. This is another one of Leonard's pieces. Again, please understand, Leonard Peltier is not a cause. Leonard Peltier is a man. Leonard Peltier is a Chippewa. Leonard Peltier is an Indian person. His heart beats in him. He breathes. He hurts. He yearns. We talk about Leonard. Don't confuse the man with the cause. The cause is his freedom. We have to know the man. And what I'm trying to share with you some now is this man that we're all working so hard to try to free. This is another piece of Leonard's. It's called We Are Not Separate. We are not separate beings, you and I. We are different strands of the same being. You are me and I am you, and we are they and they are us. This is how we're meant to be. Each of us one, each of us all. You reach out across the void of otherness to me, and you touch your own soul, difference. Let us not only love our sameness, but our unsameness. In our difference is our strength. Let us be not for ourselves alone, but also for that other, who is our deepest self. Leonard has reached across nation to nation. You know how sometimes we Indians fight nation to nation and squabble with each other. Leonard has reached across those gaps and brought nations together with his own suffering, with his own bravery. And Leonard doesn't whine about his suffering. Leonard stands there and takes it proudly. He takes it bravely. He takes it with his head lifted high. You know, I have a good friend, David Hill. David has a saying that he attributes to Leonard, and I can see where it came from. It's probably his. But it is, no man can write your back if you stand up. Leonard has not bowed. He has stood up. I'm going to show you a little more insight into the spirit of this man that we're trying to help. This man who is a defender of his people and who never once in his life killed anybody. That's a fact. My friends, it's nothing I'm trying to say, let's forgive him because he killed somebody. He didn't kill anybody. He fought for his people, but he never killed a person, not in his life. The government knows that. They know that. And they're still holding him. This piece is called An Eagle's Cry. Listen to me. Listen. I am the Indian voice. Hear me crying out in the wind. Hear me crying out of the silence. I am the Indian voice. Listen to me. I speak for our ancestors. They cry out to you from the unstill grave. I speak for the children yet unborn. They cry out to you from the unspoken silence. I am the Indian voice. Listen to me. I am the chorus of millions. Hear us. Our eagle's cry will not be stilled. We are your own conscience calling to you. We are yourself crying unheard within you. Let my unheard voice be heard. Let me speak in my heart, and the words be heard whispering on the wind to millions, to all who care, to all with ears to hear, and hearts to beat as one with mine. Put your ear to the earth, and you hear my heart beating there. Put your ear to the wind, and hear me speaking there. We are the voice of the earth, of the future, of the mystery. Hear us. This is the spirit of the man we're fighting for. And it touches me deeply that this man can stand there in that prison, in that iron house, looking through bars, and have such dignity and courage and wisdom. It touches me deeply. I beg you to help us. I have one more sharing of our brother Leonard's spirit I want to pass to you now. One more sharing. It's called I Have No Apologies, Only Sorrow. I can't apologize for what I haven't done, but I can grieve, and I do. Every day, every hour. I grieve for those who died at the Oglala firefight in 1975, and for their families. For the families of the FBI agents, Jack Collar and Ronald Williams. And yes, for the family of Joe Kilwright Stuntz, a 21-year-old brave-hearted Indian whose death from a bullet at Oglala that same day, like the deaths of hundreds of other Indians at Pine Ridge at that terrible time, has never been investigated. My heart aches in remembering the suffering and fear under which so many of my people were forced to live at that time. The very suffering and fear that brought me and others to Oglala that day to defend the defenseless. And I'm filled with an aching sorrow, too, for the loss to my own family, because in a very real way, I also died that day. I died to my family, to my children, and to my grandchildren, to myself. I lived out my own death for nearly a quarter of a century now. Those who put me here and keep me here, knowing of my innocence, can take grim satisfaction in their sure reward, which is being who and what they are. That's as a terrible a reward as any I could imagine. I know who and what I am. I am an Indian who dared to stand up to defend his people. I am an innocent man who never murdered anyone, nor ever wanted to. And yes, I am a sun dancer. That, too, is my identity. If I am to suffer as a symbol of my people, then I suffer proudly. I will never yield. My friends, I've shared this with you because I want us not to forget Leonard Peltier, the man. Leonard Peltier, the father, the grandfather. Leonard Peltier, the brother. Leonard Peltier, the friend. Leonard Peltier, the spirit that lives within him that has not been conquered and has not been humbled and who has not bowed down. You know, Leonard was offered back some months ago if he would sign a statement saying that he was regretful for killing the agents, that it would make his chances for parole easier. As in that one piece I just read you. He cannot express regret for something he did not do. He's regretful what happened, but it wasn't Leonard's fault it happened. It wasn't his fault. He was defending his people from an attack by an aggressor using deadly force, And the last piece I read you of Leonard's, he mentioned Joe Gilwright's stunts, that he felt sad for the loss his family had suffered. On June 26, 1975, an act of murder was committed on the Jumping Bull Ranch. That day, federal agents were the aggressors in a deadly attack on the residents of the Jumping Bull Ranch. That's fact, my friends. They were the aggressors. It's not conjecture. That fact is borne out by the verdict of not guilty by reason of self-defense handed down to two other people who were tried for the deaths of the two agents that day. Bob Robidoux and Dino Butler were there with Leonard. They were tried together because they were captured together while Leonard was still in Canada. The jury that heard their trial was allowed to hear all the testimony of what had happened on Pine Ridge for the 3 previous years. A jury that was allowed to hear all the evidence available understood the law. The law states, this is pure law, one who is not the aggressor in an encounter is justified in using against his adversary when he reasonably believes that he is in immediate danger or that his family or anyone else is in immediate danger. He is justified in using deadly force against a deadly attack. That's the law. A jury of 12 people heard this case, my friends. This isn't something that I'm pulling out of thin air. They heard this case. They were allowed to hear all evidence of what happened that day. These two men were there with Leonard side by side, defending the people of Jumping Bull. They were acquitted by reason of self-defense because the FBI was termed the aggressor using deadly force. The jury, by their verdict, labeled the FBI the aggressors that day, and aggressors using deadly force. 2 of the aggressors died that day because of their own aggression. Leonard expressed his sorrow in that one piece I read you of the death of those 2 agents. Leonard didn't want anybody to die. Leonard didn't go out hunting for somebody to have a fight with. They came to Jumping Bull Ranch, a private piece of property on the Pine Ridge Reservation, armed with long rifles, automatic long rifles, handguns, and shotguns, and attacked the people who were there. The jury who heard the evidence understood that the FBI was the aggressor using deadly force. 2 of the aggressors did die, as I said. One innocent man, Leonard Peltier, was found that day. Because the jury was denied access to all the evidence allowed in the trial of Dino Butler and a 3rd man, Joe, was murdered that day by the aggressors. And who were the aggressors according to the jury verdict? This isn't Wanbli. This isn't the LPDOC. This is a jury of 12 people who heard the evidence. They saw the aggressors that day to be the FBI. Now, the FBI put out a story that Joe Stunts was killed by a long-range sniper shot, but South Dakota Assistant Attorney General William Delaney, now this is the Assistant Attorney General of South Dakota. This isn't some raggedy-ass Indian. This is the Assistant Attorney General William Delaney, was on the scene, and talking about Joe Stunts' body, said it seemed to him that it was struck by a burst across the back, implying automatic weapons fire at close range. NPR reporter Kevin McKeown, who was the FBI unintentionally left in on the scene, cooperated Delaney's observation of torso wounds, saying there was blood leaking from a jacket sleeve. McKeown also stated repeatedly that he observed no bleeding indicating a head wound. This was corroborated by a full view face and side view of Joe Stunts after death photos and to possession of former WKL-DOC attorney Bruce Ellison that revealed no head wound whatsoever. But Joe's body was given to the FBI coroner W.O. Brown. W.O. Brown is the same coroner the FBI used to rubber stamp their story of people's death on Pine Ridge for 3-4 years. W.O. Brown is the same person who said Anna Mae died of exposure, overlooking a head wound. W.O. Brown is the same person that stated 2 people during that reign of terror committed suicide by stabbing themselves in the face. Suicide by stabbing themselves in the face. This is the coroner that rubber stamped everything for the FBI. Can you imagine committing suicide by stabbing yourself in the face? Joe Stuntz was murdered that day. Joe Stuntz, a defender of his people, was murdered by the court-proven aggressors that day. I didn't make this up. The jury said by their verdict there were aggressors that day, and people there had the right to defend themselves against the aggressors using deadly force. Now, who were the aggressors that day? The FBI. That's what the verdict basically says. But Joe Stuntz wasn't afforded a trial. He was summarily executed by the FBI. The agent in charge of this murder was none other than Mr. Joe Trimbach. He was in charge of the operation that day. He was the SA in charge of the Minneapolis office. And whoever pulled the trigger on Joe Stuntz to summarily execute him, those 2 need to be called before the courts and made to answer for these crimes. Joe Stuntz's murder has never been investigated. Never. Never once. When the FBI sent reports out about the shootings that day, they gave long, windy statements about the FBI agents and who they were and their families and everything. And they also said an Indian man was killed. An Indian man, my butt. Joe Killwright Stuntz was murdered that day. You know, this Joe Trimbach published a book called AIM, American Indian Mafia. In this, he throws so much dirt up in the air to get in people's eyes. And I couldn't, for a long time, figure out why he was doing this, because nobody would publish it because it's so full of lies. He was turned down. He had to Vanity publish it. But it finally hit me, the reason he's throwing so much dirt up in the air with that book and on the internet about Leonard, and it's because he realizes that he's responsible himself for the agent's death that day and for the murder of Joe Stuntz. Joe Trimbach was relieved of his command the day after the shootout by the FBI. And I just imagine it's because the FBI realized they had one mess and they had to start covering up as fast as they could. One more time, my friends. A jury decided that day. Not Wanbli, not the LPDOC, not even Leonard Peltier or Bob Robidoux or Dino Butler. A jury of 12 people who heard all the evidence decided that the aggressors that day were the FBI. And when you're attacked by an aggressor using deadly force, you are allowed to defend yourself. Leonard was there defending himself that day. Even in that, he still didn't kill those people. He's not the person who fired to kill shots. The FBI knows he's not the person who fired to kill shots. They know it. They know he's not the person. You know, Ed Wood is a person who runs a No Parole for Peltier website. We recently lost Bob Robidoux, who was there that day with Leonard. Bob died in Spain. And Woods released this attack on Bob and Leonard after Bob's death a little more than a month ago. And I'm going to quote from him. And I hate to read it, but I want you to hear the vile crap this person puts out. And I want you to hear what I think about it. In his little release after Bob's death, he says, although a member and former director of the Leonard Peltier Defense Committee, Robidoux has treated more controversy and has done more to damage Peltier's claims of innocence than all of Peltier's detractors combined. He has consistently, especially in recent years, made statements against Peltier's interest and has been helping to solidify in the public mind his version of what happened that day on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. And Robidoux' legacy is what it is. He demonstrated that he had no respect for the dead and was a self-confessed murderer. Now here, this is the FBI agent saying, remember, Bob was acquitted for self-defense, but he was a self-confessed murderer. We took great pride in saying horrible things about his victims. He contributed little genuine support to Native American needs and issues. Peltier will not admit it, but he is probably grateful that more than one more thorn is out of his side. This death could also provide Peltier with yet another diversion from the facts surrounding the incident at Oglala. It is reasonable to assume that Peltier may now dump all the blame on Robidoux. Well, you know, Leonard has had 33 years to dump the blame, Trimbach. He has kept his mouth shut. You've dumped the blame everywhere but on yourself, Trimbach. You're the reason those agents are dead. You're the reason Joe Stuntz is dead. And you're the reason Leonard Peltier is in prison. This ex-FBI agent also goes on to cry baby for the children of slain FBI aggressors that day. Have no doubt there are many Indian families that have had their loved ones taken by the reign of terror on Pine Ridge. And have no doubt the family of murder victim Joe Stuntz missed their family member. Also, have no doubt that the court verdict on Bob and Dino's case clearly states that the FBI was the aggressor using deadly force that day. And Bob and Dino and anyone else there were legally justified in using deadly force in return. If Leonard had been allowed a fair trial, he would have been found innocent for the same reason. But he was not allowed a fair trial, and he was not found innocent. For this fool Woods to have the audacity to imply that Bob and Leonard were anything other than brothers in arms against a common aggressor is laughable. Woods does not have an understanding of how Indians work, of how our blood allows us to disagree at times, but to stand together even in disagreement. Leonard has spoken of his regard for Robert, and I will in no way try to add to it. These men were relatives. These men were blood relatives. They were cousins. This guy Wood don't get it. For this fool Ed Wood to say that Robert Robidoux was a self-confessed murderer completely overlooks the fact that Bob was found not guilty. The agents died because of their aggression that day. This is what the jury verdict says. It's not conjecture. It's pure fact. That's what the FBI does, my friends, is they put their own spin on it, and the average person hearing it come from the FBI believes it's the truth. Calling him a confessed murderer when the fact is he was acquitted for self-defense because he was defending himself and others against the people who were attempting to commit murder that day and who were using violence, deadly force that day, and who killed Joe Stuntz that day, the FBI. Now, that's how it happened, my friends. The FBI is going to throw their smoke up, and they'll throw their smoke up more and more as time goes on. But all you have to do is go look at what actually happened. You know, I told you before, I think, that they said Leonard's gun fired was the weapon that was connected to the cartridge that was found in the trunk of the car of the agents. And it was Leonard's weapon. Well, what they forgot to tell you, and what they will not tell you, is that they hid their own crime investigation report on the firing pin test on the weapon that they said was Leonard's weapon. And the firing pin test said, and it's available on the web, I'm not making this up, it says that Leonard's weapon could not have possibly fired that round. The FBI hid that from the grand jury. The FBI hid that from the defense team. They hid that until it was dug up by one of Leonard's attorneys in 2002. They hid that. That's called obstruction of justice. That's a crime. It's a crime. There's an innocent man sitting in prison while the FBI commits crime after crime after crime. The aggressors again that day, my friends, again proven by the verdict of a jury that was allowed to hear all the relevant testimony, was the FBI. This cannot be changed. It cannot be colored. It cannot be ignored. Woods' statement admits the FBI when he says that Bob Robidoux confessed. It knows Robert fired the kill shots. And the court verdict says he was within his right to fire the kill shots, defending himself and women and children from an attack by an aggressor using deadly force. Warriors defending their people. It is a clear statement that Leonard is being held in prison as an act of vengeance against all Indian people. The only murder that took place that day was that of Joe Stuntz, another fine young warrior who laid his life on the line that day in defense of his people. And one day we will see Joe Trimbach, special agent in charge of that attack upon Indian people. We'll see him. And whoever pulled the trigger on Joe Stuntz, if somebody did pull the trigger, one day we'll see them in prison. Nothing Ed Wood or Joe Trimbach can say can change the jury-rendered fact that the FBI was the aggressor that day. No matter what kind of garbage they throw up, that's a fact. That's what the jury said. They said that the FBI murdered Joe Stuntz. They didn't say that, but they were the aggressor using deadly force, but they did murder Joe Stuntz. They wrongfully imprisoned Leonard Peltier and led Bob Robidoux to be in a car in Kansas one day that blew up and probably caused an injury to his head that led to his seizure, that led to his death in Spain a few short weeks ago. And justice will come to those who have tried to cloud the issue for all these years, to hide their own culpability that day in the deaths of 3 men and the vengeful imprisonment of Leonard Peltier. The day's coming. No, the day is coming. Justice is down the road, and we're going to find it. We're going to bring it. We're going to bring it in a legal way, and we're going to make the FBI. We're going to make the FBI answer for what it's done. We're going to make an investigation happen. You know, former FBI agent M. Wesley Swearingen says, I was an FBI agent in Los Angeles when Leonard Peltier was convicted, and I know from FBI documents that I read and from statements made by fellow agents that Peltier was wrongly convicted of murdering 2 FBI agents just because the agents investigating the case wanted someone to pay for the killing of the agents. I know for a fact that the FBI is also covering up its culpability in the death of the 2 agents. That is an FBI agent himself saying he knows the FBI is covering up. You know, in a letter, this one FBI agent, Swearingen to Ed Wood, the guy who maintains the Peltier, anti-Peltier website, Swearingen says to Wood, it is a terrible tragedy that Collar and Williams were killed, but it is even more a tragedy that the FBI has forfeited its motto of fidelity, bravery, and integrity by putting innocent men such as Pratt and Peltier in jail for murders they did not commit. And he's speaking of Geronimo Pratt, another man that the FBI framed, and this FBI agent Swearingen was able to show they framed him and got him freed. An email from Swearingen to Wood, where Woods was wanting to help Agent Collar's son. Swearingen writes, this is an email dated 23rd March 2005 at 12:30 p.m. If you want to help Collar's son, why don't you help the victims of the families by having the Bureau face up to its culpabilities in a wrongful death suit and make the Bureau pay for the wrongful deaths? This is one agent telling another agent, make the Bureau pay for the wrongful death. Woods has expressed concern for Collar's son. And it has to be understood, too, that Woods has never been on a reservation or a reserve. He's never had any dealings with AIM. Again, this is from in a letter dated 2005 from Swearingen to Woods. If Robidoux actually shot the agents, and here again, they're saying they know that Leonard didn't shoot them. They know Robert did. If Robidoux actually shot the agents, as he now claims, how could Peltier be guilty of pulling the trigger? If Peltier is guilty of conspiracy to commit murder, why are the conspirators not in jail with Peltier? This may seem like a play on words, Swearingen says, or a matter of semantics, but if Peltier did not actually shoot Collar and Williams, wasn't he wrongly convicted? This is one FBI agent telling another FBI agent he was wrongly convicted. Woods had asked Swearingen to explain to him how he knew that the FBI was covering up. In a letter in March 2005, this is Swearingen's reply. It has been 28 years since I retired from the FBI and 33 years since I worked a racial squad in Los Angeles. There is no way that I could remember details specifying when and where and exactly what I was said to support my belief of wrongful conviction. I was convinced that Peltier was convicted, that when Peltier was convicted, that the FBI did its best to convict an innocent man. This is one more time an FBI agent telling another FBI agent the FBI did its best to convict an innocent man. He goes on to say, if you want to learn what actually happened to Peltier, in the Peltier case, I suggest you read all the FBI documents that have been released to date, and then read the thousands of documents that have not been released by the FBI. And this is still Swearingen speaking. What is the FBI hiding that they have to withhold thousands of documents relating to the killing of Jack and Ron Williams? These are direct quotes from an FBI agent. They're available on the web. Actually, you know where I got them, my friends? I got them digging through Ed Woods' correspondence on his own website. Woods has gotten tunnel vision. He only sees what he wants to see. He doesn't see this agent talking to him saying, look at the truth, my brother. Look at the truth. He doesn't see it. I have one more FBI agent here I'd like to read you a statement from. This is Don Edwards. He's a former FBI agent, and he was a retired representative in the U.S. Congress. And he goes to say, I quote, as a former congressman from California for over 30 years, a former FBI agent and a citizen committed to justice, I wish to speak out strongly against the FBI's efforts in opposing the clemency appeal from Leonard Peltier. I served as chairman of the subcommittee on the civil and constitutional rights in the U.S. House of Representatives. I took a personal interest in Mr. Peltier's case and became convinced that he had never received a fair trial. Even the government now admits that the theory it presented against Mr. Peltier at trial was not true. After 24 years in prison, this was written a few years ago, Leonard Peltier has served an inordinate amount of time, and deserves the right to consideration of his clemency request on the facts and merits. The FBI continues to deny its improper conduct on Pine Ridge during the 70s and in the trial of Leonard Peltier. The FBI used Mr. Peltier as a scapegoat, and they continue to do so today. At every step of the way, FBI agents and leadership have opposed any admission of wrongdoing by the government, and they have sought to misrepresent and politicize the meaning of clemency for Leonard Peltier. The killing of FBI agents at Pine Ridge was reprehensible, but the government now admits that they cannot prove Mr. Peltier killed these agents. Granting clemency to Mr. Peltier should not be viewed as expressing any disrespect for the current agents or leadership of the FBI, nor would it represent any condoning of the killings that took place on Pine Ridge. Instead, clemency from Mr. Peltier would recognize past wrongdoing and the undermining of the government's case since the trial. Finally, it would serve as a crucial step in reconciliation and healing between the U.S. government and Native American nations on Pine Ridge Reservation and throughout the country. Don Edwards, Democrat, California, retired, member of Congress 1963 to 1965. Leonard's innocent. I read you the words from the heart and spirit of this warrior, of this Chippewa man, who is not bowed, bent, scraped, or healed. He has stood all these years. He has stood for 33 years with the words in his mouth of who killed the agents. He has kept them in his mouth. Find me a brother any finer than that, and I will give him the homage he deserves. Leonard Peltier is America's #1 political prisoner. He needs to be freed. Call the president. Call the president. I gave you that hotline number. Call the president. Tell him to free Leonard Peltier. Also, I'm going to ask you one more time, my friends. The LPDOC has funding requirements. We're low. They're low. We need cash just to keep the office open. Please, if you would, send a $10 bill to the LPDOC, P.O. Box 7488, Fargo, North Dakota, 58106. And Daniel, I'm going to leave you for the evening. I appreciate the time you've given me and the time you devoted to Leonard.
No problem. And thank you very much for spending some time here on Mohawk-radio.com, and much appreciated. And Leonard and many people also much appreciate you spending some of your time, most of your time, doing what you do.
Well, we'll talk to you again next week, Daniel, and I think we'll have some new news for you next week.
Okay. We will talk to you later.
Thank you, brother. Talk to you.
Yep. Ona. And that was Wanbli giving the free Leonard Peltier program, one of which comes on every Tuesday. And I asked them to join the broadcast before